You are listening to the Hiking Radio Network, where we talk the walk with shows by hikers, about hikers, for everybody.
Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail, the ultimate midlife crisis. Join Steve and his guests every week as he staggers from Georgia to Maine.
Hi guys, and welcome back to episode number 120 of Mighty Blue on the Appalachian Trail. We're back on track with our AT theme after my adventures in Spain, and today I'm launching a little series that may be of interest to you all. As some of you know, the second part of my hiking plan for these 12 months is to go again for another Appalachian Trail through hike in 2019. For that reason, I won't be able to follow another hiker as closely as I've done in the last couple of years. First with Jessa last year, and earlier this year with a dedicated podcast with Bruce Matson, or RTK. I loved doing both of these, but I just can't give the time to do it properly next year. So I've come up with a kind of compromise. This year I've been interviewing 5 hikers who will be going in 2019 and asking them all the same questions. I think you're going to identify with some of the questions, as I believe that these are the kind of things we need to consider before we head out on such a long journey. I'm trying to get a uniform approach to these 2019 hikers to see the variation in their preparation and their experience of the trail. I hope that you enjoy following along with them. Once I'm out on the trail, I'll be catching up with these 5 individuals from time to time, not every week, to see how they're getting on. 4 of these 5 interviews will be the middle segment of our show in the coming month, but today we have a full-on interview with one of these class of 2019 through hikers. Nate Stockton, who glories in the wonderful trail name of Turd Ferguson, is a friend I met on the trip I did with the Fat Guys and Gals back in the Woods group last year. Nate and I are pretty chatty guys, so being buddies, we just talked and talked. In the end, I thought that the interview was sufficient for its very own episode. He's put a lot of thought into this trip, and you'll hear some of his machinations as we talk through his upcoming adventure. For this week's middle section, do you recall Dan Wowick, a really articulate bloke a couple of months ago who told us how to build a fire? Well, Dan's back with what he calls the 4 survival priorities in the wilderness. Don't worry, the AT is safe 99.99% of the time, but we all know that things can go wrong. Dan gives you pointers for those times. Last, we have 2 chapters of The Year We Seize the Day by Elizabeth Best and Colin Bowles. One chapter is less than 2 minutes long, so I lobbed in the following one as well. So now, before I lose your attention, let's hear the first in our series of the class of 2019 with our first hiker, Nate Stockton. Here's Nate. Okay, I'd like to introduce my buddy, Nate Stockton. Nate and I hiked last year with the Fat Guys and Gals back in the woods. Hi, Nate. How are you?
Hey, Steve. How you doing? Good to talk to you.
And you. Now, I know last year you were talking about doing the AT, and it's going to happen. So that's exciting in itself. But first, we'd like to start with you just introducing yourself, your name, age, where you live, your start date on the AT, if you've already chosen it.
Sure. My name's Nate. Of course, a lot of the guys and a lot of guys that I've hiked with before basically know me as Turd Ferguson.
Good name.
43, and I'm looking at starting about mid-March, I think. It all kind of depends on my leave dates for when I do retire.
Yeah. Tell people why you're retiring at such a young age, Nate.
Well, I've been in the Army for 22 years, and, it's time to hang it up and let the young guys do it now, and they're probably smarter and make better decisions now anyway, so. The mountains are calling, Steve.
Yes.
It's been a long time in the waiting.
They do call, don't they? And I know you've done the Fat Guys a couple of times now. Is this I don't know what it's defined as a long distance hike. Is it 100 miles, 200 miles? I'm not sure. But is this your first long distance hike you've done at all?
Yeah, I get for a through hike over a couple 100 miles. Yeah, this will be the first one.
Right. So how long has the AT then been on your radar? Was that always the one you wanted to do first?
Actually, so it's probably been about, I want to say about 9-10 years now. Right. And it's because I didn't know anything about the mountains. I'm from the Midwest. We don't we got the Ozarks. But when my wife and I went on vacation one time for a 4-day weekend. We just went out to Hot Springs to stay in the cabin.
Right.
And you take your first step on the trail, and it's just, man, it gets you. It pulls you in.
I know exactly how you feel. I know exactly how you feel. Yes.
we did that first day hike, and then next thing you know, we're at the little outfitter there, and I'm buying 3 books, doing everything I can to research as much as I can on her.
Yeah.
So,
what do you think it is, though? Isn't that interesting? So many people say that they like, it's almost like they put their feet on the Appalachian Trail and something hits them, doesn't it?
It does. And I had no idea about the culture. I had no idea about, I didn't know what a through hike was. I mean, I know what a 4-stroke march is, right. But to actually do it for enjoyment and see the hikers, as they were on the trail, I had no idea that these people were doing this for, 2,200 miles. I mean, it was something else.
Yeah. And
so, lo and behold, a challenge.
we spent a bit of time last year together on the AT for a week with your daughter as well, daughter Lexi, and a couple of other guys. And you obviously got a real taste of it then, and you've done that part of it, done some of the AT before. What do you think it is about the AT itself, or long distance hiking itself, that really appeals to your psyche?
Well, it's I think it's the challenge. For me, it's more to reconnect with maybe who I used to be before I ever joined the Army and made a career. I kind of want to find that, I guess that kid spirit in me again, and go back to remembering what it was like to be 17 years old and not really make your responsibility. I don't know. It's just to go back and find that youth again in me. I think that's what
there will be days you feel every day of your 43 years as well, though. And I certainly felt every day of my 61 when I did it. It's a tiring thing, but you're a physically strong guy, and I could see from you hiking last year, I don't think the physicality will be the big thing for you anyway. And so we've already asked about your work. You can take the time off work. You literally are retiring now, aren't you? Have you thought about what you're going to do with your life in terms of going forward from this?
Well, I was going to apply to be your understudy, but no, Steve. Honestly,
you haven't got the accent, mate.
I have no idea what I really want to do. I've had some opportunities to do some work afterwards.
Nice.
I've had some phone calls, but I'm just not for sure yet. Being 9 months out,
sure.
From even being retired, I'm not for sure exactly what I want to do, and I don't want to commit myself just to a new job straight out of the chute.
No. I think the trail, though, won't the trail be a great transition for you, to give it some thought what you actually really want to do with your life, because you're going to be on the trail you'll probably do it quicker than a lot of us did, but you'll be 4 to 6 months. That gives you a lot of time to think about things, so it's a perfect ending for you that career to start your next career, isn't it?
Well, yeah, and the good thing about it is, starting in March, I'm actually not even going to be retired until July.
Right.
So I'm going to be on leave for a lot of that time. So I'm still going to be getting, basically my check, my paycheck.
Nice.
Because I saved up so much leave. So it's going to help me, to finance my hike as well. So
Very cool.
Yeah, it's just a great, like you said, a transition. I mean, and I think that's why so many guys that are retiring, especially from the military, they're able to do that because they kind of see something that they want to do, and we plan so far ahead.
Sure.
And I think that's how it just works out for us.
Yeah, and I know you are going no-bow. Did you ever consider going a SOBO or a flip-flop or oboe?
I was kind of tinkering with the crazy thought of doing like a modified flip.
Oh yeah, in what way?
So I almost was kind of considering, depending on if my timeline didn't work out, starting in Damascus,
right,
and hiking south just to get, the first, what is it, 600 miles, I think. And then, and kind of missing some of the bubble. And then, what was it, hiking like the rest of the way north or something. And then, or maybe it was like from, part of the way south and then going up to whatever it was going to be, Maine was going to be at the end.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just going to be some kind of crazy flip flop that I was looking at.
I know.
And,
I know that when we talked about it, when we were on the Fat Guys thing, and you said that if the Fat Guys were going to do the 100-mile wilderness, which they did consider doing the 100-mile wilderness, you said you would do that, but you wouldn't do Katahdin. You wanted Katahdin to come at the end of your AT through hike, and I totally understand that.
Yeah, I don't want to. Yeah, I never wanted. I don't even want to see it until the very end. And I've held firm to that actually. And going up to Maine over Labor Day weekend, I'm still not going to go up to Katahdin. I'm taking my daughter up there, and my brother-in-law is actually in this, and for the hiker feed. But we're not going to touch it. We're going to stay right there at Grafton.
Cool. Now, I know you had all your gear last year. Have you made many adjustments to the gear? Are you really trying to go ultralight this year?
Hey, what's a hiker without adjustments, right, Steve?
Exactly. That was a silly question because I knew you had made adjustments, yeah.
Yeah, so I did. I bought a duplex to get lighter off of my Rattlesnake 2 from Big Agnes. And I've saved about 2.5 pounds on that, I think. And then my pack, I went ahead and got the Arc Zip Haul, I think it is. And and I had I had one of the Ospreys, and I love the Osprey. Don't get me wrong, and I love the Rattlesnake too. As a matter of fact, my daughter really loves that one because it's got lights. But I know that I don't want to carry the extra 5 pounds.
Yes, makes a difference
on gear. So I did go lighter, after all, after the years of hiking, you kind of learn that stuff. And then I did get I upgraded on my sleeping bag for a Z-Pack.
Wow, you changed it all out.
I decided not to hammock.
Changed it all out.
Yeah, because remember, I bought the War Bonnet hammock.
Yes,
and I was going to do that. Yeah, but since I had the shoulder surgery, I'm able to sleep better on the ground now because I can move my left arm up over my head and it doesn't impinge in the joint. Sure. So now I can actually sleep on the ground. So I really don't need the hammock and carry the, because it's kind of a little bit heavy as far as a hammock goes. But I also got my daughter, what is it? UL is making like a prototype called the Spark.
I saw.
And I bought that for my daughter.
It's a pack, isn't it? Was it a 35-liter pack or something like that?
Yeah, it's a 35-liter pack. It's got the adjustable torso, and she's 5.
Yeah.
So she'll be able, as she grows, it'll fit her up until she's like a teenager.
Yeah. Very cool.
So
very cool.
Yeah, so we've been doing a few upgrades, and
What do you think is going to weigh your pack without food and water?
So I weighed my pack with food for 3 days, and it weighs 19.44 pounds.
That's cool. That's very cool. You really appreciate that. I've got to work on getting mine down, definitely. So I'll be interested in talking to you about what you've got as well. Now, I know you're out of the Army, but you are 43. He says from his perch of 65. How are you going to prepare, especially for the physicality, or do you feel you're fit enough already just to hit the trail?
No, I'm not. Especially now that since I had the surgery, I haven't been able to do anything for about 6 weeks now. Right. But this morning I did go out and I walked 4 miles at about 5 in the morning.
Right.
And I'm gonna watch the baseball game here in a little bit. And
that's good exercise. That's real good exercise. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna get on my treadmill for probably about an hour of it and watch them probably lose. And then I'll probably go for a walk with my daughter and push my son out in the stroller for maybe 30, 40 minutes this evening when it cools down.
Cool. And what about
yeah.
I mean, you're gonna get the physical side of it quite easy. What about the mental side of the hike? Because you know this can be tough after a period of time. How are you going to cope with those tough times when they happen? The 4 straight days of rain and things like that.
Yeah, so I've been struggling with that actually, Stephen. That's a great question. I wasn't expecting you to even bring that up or think about, but when we were in the Smokies, that's the first time I've ever hiked the AT when it just was a miserable river.
Yes.
And it rained so much, and I got to thinking, I was like, oh my gosh, so it's going to rain a lot when I'm out there for the year. And I just remember how bad it was. So I never hiked with music before. I broke down and I got me sounds so old here. I bought an iPod.
Whoa. Look at you.
I know.
Steve Jobs.
I bought an iPod, and I downloaded some music. So I'm gonna listen to some music this time to get me through the dry days.
Cool.
And I think that'll help me out a little bit. I do believe that my wife is gonna meet me on the trail in a couple places, because I have to break up my time.
Yeah.
I have to, because I got to go for 30 days and then come back and actually do the retirement, sign the papers.
Oh, that's that is a drag to have to do that, I must say, to get off the trail and then get back on again, having done it myself. Yeah, tough.
Well, it's one of those kind of blessings in disguise, because my wife will be able to pick me up somewhere near Hot Springs, because we live here in, Fort Bragg. Yeah. And we'll be able to spend the weekend together, when I do that. So she'll come get me and then take me back. Yeah. And then she'll probably come up to like Virginia and see me up near Richmond. Right. And then I think she's going to fly up to New York, and I'll just take the train into New York City, and we'll meet in New York City. Cool. And then maybe, she'll come up for the fall colors in Maine.
Yeah, nice.
And maybe hang out with Sherpa for the hiker feed next year.
Yeah, very cool. Good idea. You'll be coming through for the hiker feed. Good idea. So hopefully will I. So will I. So I know you mentioned about the fact you're still going to be getting a check from the Army. So the question about how have you planned your money for the trip, you're being paid to hike. So we won't even worry about that one. We know you're okay with that. You've got that all resolved. You do know, of course, though, that you do need more on the trail than most people think they do, don't you? It just costs more. Yeah. It just costs more money. You hemorrhage money when you go into town. Yeah,
what did they say? It's like about $1,000 a month plan for
about that, yeah.
And I'll be fine for that. Sure. I'm gonna try to stay out of. I don't know. I say that I'm gonna try to avoid some of that stuff. I don't plan on spending time at trail days. No. I'm probably just gonna blow through Damascus and skip all that.
It's worth seeing, though. Trail days are worth seeing, I've got to tell you. Having done it as a non-hiker, it was worth seeing to me.
Yeah, I might go back the following year just to participate in that way. But and like I said, with my wife, she can pay for my trips whenever she comes out and sees me, for my hotel stays.
Even better. Happy days.
Exactly.
Oh, funny. So how do you think you're going to, the odds of finishing the trail, 1 in 4 people finish. Why do you think that you can beat those odds?
Because I've already failed. The first time I hiked, being in the Army for so long, I thought to myself, I can knock out 20-mile days easy on the AT.
Yeah.
I carry at least a 50-pound rucksack. I can do it, 12 miles in 4 hours. This shouldn't be hard at all. I got all day to do this. And, I got back down to Dahlonega, and it was like, holy smokes, this is a whole different kind of hike. And I ended up, I got demoralized. The first time I ever hiked the AT, I did 70 miles of it. And I got off there at it was at Dix Creek Gap, right there at the top of Georgia.
Sure.
And I had my wife come get me, and I was embarrassed, I was humbled, and I just couldn't believe that I let myself think that I could do
You know what, Nate?
Something like that.
You should never ever be embarrassed by it. You should being humbled is a thing that it does to all of us. So every single person I think who's ever hiked the Appalachian Trail has been humbled by it. I don't think anybody should. The fact you try it always is the thing, as far as I'm concerned. Nobody ever fails once they get on there.
Steve, I wasn't embarrassed that I struggled. I was embarrassed by myself about my mindset, because this is before the trail kind of taught me a huge lesson.
Right.
But I looked at a lot of the people that were hiking all those miles and through hiking or whatever, and I was kind of thinking, my God, these people can do it. I can do it, because there's no way these people can, finish. And looking back, I was embarrassed, because a lot of those people that I couldn't believe were even attempting freaking made it to Katahdin, and
yes.
And the reason I was embarrassed was because I was so judgmental, and it's one of those things that will never sit well with me to this day, that I allowed myself to look at somebody and think that way.
Lesson learned, buddy.
Lesson
learned.
Yeah. And when it humbled me to that point where, I learned a big lesson, Steve.
Yeah, good thing to learn. So you mentioned you're going to see your wife a few times. Are you going to have logistical support? Because you understand logistics. I know you do very much. When you're out there, how are you going to do it? Are you going to resupply on trail or get stuff sent to you? What are you going to do?
Steve, you know me, I'm a summer ride, I'm gonna link up with a group and kind of piggyback off of them, because nobody's going to turn down a good group of people that look like they're, pleasant to be around. So
that's right.
That's the way to do it, just piggyback and get into town. And, like the guy in Stockton, that picked us up when we were,
yes, I remember.
Gosh, I mean, how can you miss out on an experience like that? Why mail this stuff and be tied to a timeline of, when the post office opens the next day?
We were all in the back of his truck, weren't we? It was hilarious, that journey.
God. Yeah, sitting on top of the cab of that truck going 50 down that highway,
That was awesome.
And that guy stayed open late for us, Steve. You remember that?
I do. That restaurant.
He actually picked us up, brought us to his restaurant, and fed us after he was closed.
It was very cool.
I mean, you miss out on stuff like that if you don't try it.
I totally agree.
It's a good thing.
So what are you looking forward to the most? You know about the trail, the various iconic spots that are there. Are you looking forward to the people, a certain place? Is there something you dream about at night? I think, I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah. I want to go out there and I want to be the hiker that makes friends just like everybody else does. Everybody wants to make friends. I want to be able to give out help if somebody needs it. I don't want to be pushy. And because I do, I've learned a lot being out there in the past, but I don't want to push my knowledge on anybody. But, if I see somebody really struggling, I want to be able to be there to help somebody because everybody's trying to do the same thing. Everybody's trying to get to Katahdin.
Exactly. Yeah. Nice thought. Very nice thought, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. People will need it, and I think that this is such a collaborative effort for people to get there. When someone's down, you try to bring them up, and when you're down, they try to bring you up. It's a great way of doing that, and I know you found that. I'm sure in the Fat Guys just for that week we were out there. So you're going to get that for 4, 5, or 6 months, whatever it is, and you're going to love that part of it, I'm sure. And what about the thing you're not looking forward to?
I'm kind of worried about the bubble this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, a little bit. And I'll tell you why. So what was it? 2 years ago, when I did that first time, I started in the bubble in, March 6th, and it was good, but it was really, really busy.
Yeah.
And I want to, knowing now what I know about getting into the Smokies, because if everybody's starting, in March, which they will, when, not everybody quits before you get to the Smokies and trying to, trying to get in a shelter.
Yes.
That one is bothering me a little bit, and seems like there's a lot of bear closures because of the bears this year.
Yes.
So I'm a little worried about that. And, honestly speaking, I mean, if we're really, I might as well throw it out. But, I've seen a lot of bickering on some of the AT, the through hike website,
Yes.
On Facebook, and it's kind of troubling to me because, you don't never see a whole lot of bickering on the trail, but I've been seeing a lot of bickering on people that are getting ready to try to go out and through hike.
I've seen this. I've seen this the last couple of years, Nate. I've said it on the program several times before that Facebook is not real life. It's not what happens on the trail. All those stupid people behind computers, they're not the people who actually go out on the trail. They just slag everybody else off. And there is no right way to do this. People go out there and do it themselves. You're going to find it is nothing like Facebook out there. And you've been on it there anyway. And it was, let's face it, our group, we met other people out there. We never had any problems with other people, did we? So, I wouldn't worry about that. That's what I hate about Facebook so much, even though I use it myself. It can be so negative, and yet the positivity you're going to find out there is just so much better. I can guarantee you that for all that period you're out there, you won't have any of that nonsense, I tell you. So.
Yeah, but that's one of the things I'm really kind of worried about is I'm really hoping that negativity doesn't carry over onto the actual trail.
Yeah,
because it has been. Yeah, I was pretty shocked some of the things I've seen here in the past week.
Yeah, Facebook is. I don't think Facebook's the real thing, so don't worry about that. Now, the other thing is, and it's a question I'm not sure I should be asking necessarily. If there was one thing that could keep you off the trail, then what might that be that might change your plans?
Man, another good question, Steve. And it really is, because this is the one I've been kind of struggling with, but if I decided to change my plans at the last minute, it would be the hike to PCT.
Oh, interesting. Interesting.
Yeah, Steve, that's why I said it's a great question, because I was on the fence I've been on the fence for about 5 months on whether I was going to do the PCT or the AT. And, I've been saying all along, the AT is my first girlfriend. I got to go back and just see her one more time, and
your wife's going to appreciate that, by the way. Yeah.
She knows.
I know.
I got an awesome wife, by the way, so I don't worry about that too much. But that's the one thing that would throw the wrench in the plan is if at the last minute I said, you know what, I'm going to wait till April when I actually do sign out of the Army and just go hike the PCT.
I tell you what, I'm standing here. I always stand when I record. I'm looking up at the picture that I've got of me at the top of Katahdin. I could tell you, there's nothing on the PCT that's ever going to give you that sign over the top of the Katahdin sign. So, I'm sure the PCT is a fantastic hike, and I'd love to be able to do the elevation myself. But you come back and tell me that I'm not right when you've done the top of Katahdin next year.
Yeah, I know what you're saying, Steve, and I can't intelligently argue this point with you right now because I have not through hiked and I haven't done this. But what I will say is, I love feeling small in very large open spaces, and the green tunnel, if you will,
it does get a bit green, yeah.
That's what I'm saying. So the AT, as much as I love it, being out there, with you guys and doing it is a social trail, but it's also a green tunnel, and you don't go out there and hike it and feel very small all the time. That, of course, when you get to the top of a bald or up there on on top of those ridge lines, you do. But I've been watching some of the videos from some of the other podcasters and your radio shows, listening to some of the folks that you got on your,
Sure.
just Dixie, seeing her old previous videos, and it's like, the Sierra Nevadas are seriously drawing me in, and that is the one thing, because Steve, in the CDT, I mean,
You sound like you're talking yourself out of the AT already.
well, that's why I'm doing the AT first, is because I'm afraid that if I did those big hikes, the CDT or the PCT first, I'm afraid that I would,
keep the plan, Nate.
the AT
Keep
would
the plan.
me.
Stay with the plan. It will not disappoint you. I promise you. Did you hear Dixie when I asked her, when I said to her, when you're old and grey and you look back, which of the 3 trails you've done or you're doing will make you smile the most? She immediately said the AT.
Yeah. And again, well, and I can't speak for her, but you're right. I know.
Don't change the plan.
But I love feeling small in huge open spaces. I mean, when you're, looking at Forester Pass, I mean, could you imagine standing on top of Forester Pass? And
I have. I did it. I did go over
Oh,
Forester.
did you make it?
I did. I think it was Forester. Is that Forester the one? Oh, no, that was the one out. No, the one out of, I can't remember the name of the beginning of the John Muir, after about.
You were southbound, right?
I was southbound. Yeah. No, I didn't do. I went to the one. Okay. I can't remember the name of the pass. I went over one of the passes, and you're right. That's an interesting point you make. You're not in a green tunnel. You do feel small in a vast area, but there are places on the AT, several places on the AT, where you still feel like you're a small person in a big area. So you're still going to get that as well. I tell you, especially up in New Hampshire, especially in New Hampshire and Maine as well.
That's true. That's true.
So
I do agree with that.
So, on the assumption that you haven't changed your mind in the course of this interview, what do you hope to get from this particular experience of the AT?
I think I want to, what's the word I'm looking for? I guess.
I can edit this, don't worry.
I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, but I want to, re-engineer my brain, I think. You know what I mean? I want to,
yes, I do.
I kind of want to get away from the fast-paced, decision making and, the leadership, just, all the stuff that goes along with being in the Army.
Sure.
And I kind of want to take some time for myself, for, looking inside myself and just decompressing. That's the word I'm looking for. I want to decompress.
Sure.
Okay.
Well, you'll certainly have the chance to do that, Nate. You definitely have the chance to do that. And the very last question is, whether you finish it or not, will you still come back on the trail and tell us how it went?
Oh, yeah. And I'll never quit the trail. No matter what. I mean, the group of guys that we've all, I mean, we're all family, I didn't even through hike with any of you guys, and y'all are my trail family already. Just, and look at, here we are, you going back this year, in March. If Sherpa decides to go back out and do it again,
Jack will be out there as well, won't he? Jack Masters is going to be out there, I think.
He did say that he's thinking about trying it again. And then Lumberjack, he's probably going to hike with all of us, cool. At one point or another on the trail. So, I just, I will always be out there. I will always go back and do the hiker feeds whenever I can.
Cool.
It's just a great community. And that's the thing why, yes, I got to complete the AT.
Right, there we are.
Sometime.
We've brought you back. We've brought you back.
Well, you never know. It's the relationships.
I agree. All right, mate. Well, look, it's been great talking to you. I really appreciate you taking the time. And I'm going to see you out there anyway, obviously. And obviously we'll speak quite a bit before we go. But lovely to talk to you, and we'll catch up soon, all right?
Yeah. Hey, are you going to bring, when you do yours, are you going to bring your global radio so you can listen to the Mighty Blue?
I'm going to be doing the Mighty Blue on the trail itself. So, we'll...
No. I'm talking about the football team. your Mighty Blue football team.
Oh, of course I listen to that. Yeah, of course. I mean, that kind of goes without saying. I mean, really, that's why I'm Mighty Blue.
Yeah, I had to ask. I didn't know if you were going to try to listen to them when you were out on the trail.
Absolutely, of course I do. I try to get somewhere near Wi-Fi on a Saturday.
All right,
buddy. Well, you take it easy, all right? And we'll catch up. We'll catch up soon.
Thank you.
Cheers, then. Bye.
Cheers.
I loved talking to Nate when we did that interview. You could tell that he was still thinking about it, and he had no idea what I might ask. He's a strong guy, and the physicality should be fine for him. I also think he may have benefited from not finishing the first time. He's had his mindset adjustment and knows what it takes now. I'm looking forward to meeting up and chatting again with him when he gets out there. Mind you, I was a bit taken aback about the PCT. Don't do it, Nate. It's our year to stand on that brown sign on Katahdin. You know it makes sense. Before I move on to Dan Warwick, I thought I'd update you on a few more 5-star reviews of the podcast on Apple. It's still a joy to see these, so keep them coming. Katahdin Monkey says they've just bought their first backpack, and this show is really keeping me inspired. Keep at it, Katahdin Monkey. 123 Uncle Sam says that he's very much enjoying hearing about your walk on the Camino and wishes me a successful hike. Well, 123 Uncle Sam, your good wishes helped, as it was successful. Thanks for that. Finally, Privy Town. Nice. Lives on Hawaii and gets homesick for hikes back on the mainland. He has that I and my guests do a great job of keeping me company on my morning and afternoon commute across the island. Good to know, Privy Town. Now back to Dan Wowack and his 4 survival priorities. Here's Dan. Right, we've got Dan Wowack again. Hi, Dan. How are you?
Good. How are you, Steve?
Not too bad. And after setting fire to the forest last week, we are going to we're going to talk about the things you need to survive in the forest, which is interesting, pretty wide-ranging subject, I suspect. So take it away, Dan.
All right. So, yeah, I always like to start out by saying, because people ask a lot, as soon as you say survival, or I say I'm a survival instructor, they take it to the far extreme of I'm running around the woods barefoot with just a knife and I'm wearing fur and stuff like that. But there's really a lot more to it. And there's a lot of different things that we can do as just outdoorsmen, as people who enjoy recreating outside, just to keep ourselves safe. And that's really the approach I take with my school and my classes and any education I give anybody is, if you're going to be outside, how can I set you up for success in case something bad happens? And that's
are there some general principles to follow then?
Yes. So I like to say the survival priorities. And these shift sometimes. There's no specific order. It depends on your situation. But when we think about survival and we think about we're recreating outside and something happens, we need to think about fire, shelter, water, and food. I mean, they're basic human needs. They're things that we use every day in a sense. We turn our heat on or we turn our air conditioning on to make us hot or cool. We live in our house. We drink our water or our coffees just to hydrate. And then, of course, we eat. So
I don't want to read too much into what you just said, but when you gave the order, you said fire first. Is that such a priority for you?
Normally that does rank number one, even in warmer weather, because if we're in a remote area, we want to make sure that we're well hydrated. And with that comes, we don't want to drink bad water. And there's always a chance you can have bad water. So boiling your water is always going to kill anything that's in it. It's the best way to purify water. There's some downfalls to it, but if we can boil water with our fire, then by all means, we're ahead of the game. Fire is going to keep us warm. So even if we can't set a shelter up, we can still stay warm in a cold environment. And then if we somehow gather food, either by getting like an animal or just having some type of freeze-dried meal, we can still cook that over the fire. So there's a lot that fire provides us with just that one little element.
Okay. So go through those different areas then and tell us what you think about each of those.
Okay. So we start with fire. There's a lot of different things that can happen with fire, from boiling water to cooking food to staying warm. And there's a ton of different ways to start that fire. Then we go into shelter. And shelters don't have to be an elaborate tent setup or anything. A simple tarp, we can do a ton of different things with the tarp, from making A-frame, the old style pup tents that the military used.
Right.
Yeah. Just string it up between 2 trees just to block the wind. And that is a tremendous lifesaver in a cold, windy environment. And then we look at water. That's really something that we all need. I mean, we need to stay hydrated. Even in cold conditions, drinking warm water is going to help raise our body's core temperature and keep us warm inside and keep our body healthy. And in very hot environments, dehydration can play a huge factor. So being able to drink that water again is important. And then I always say fourth in line is food. And a lot of people cringe because they want to eat. And we're so accustomed to eating 3, 4, 5 meals a day and being able to snack and stop at the convenience store. But the reality is we can go long amounts of time without any food. So really food needs to not be an afterthought, but it shouldn't be high on your list of priorities. We need it in a long-term environment, but if we're lost and we're hoping somebody comes and rescues us because we left a good plan in place for, say, hey, if we're not at this spot in 2 days, something happened, we might have to spend 5 days out there. You can go 5 days without food. It's not going to be pretty, but you can do it.
So when you go hiking, and I presume you still hike, do you?
Yeah. Yep. I do a lot of hiking and trail running.
So when you go hiking and you go out there, how much food do you normally take with you if you're going on say a week? If you did a week's hike, would you take much food or would you resupply at different places? How would you tend to do it?
Well, I think I'm a little bit outside the norm because I always like to push myself a little bit. So I try for 2 solid meals a day, and they could be dehydrated meals. I'm a fan of them. I like them. I don't have any negative thoughts about that. I know some people don't like them, but I like dehydrated meals. Add the water, heat it up, and you're good to go. And then I usually supply throughout the day then with different types of protein bars, granola bars, things like that. So if I can get my 2 solid meals in with a couple bars a day, that's usually enough for me.
So because of fire, you tend to go stoveless, I presume, do you?
Yes. If there's a situation in which fires are prohibited, then I'm not going to start a fire to heat up my water or cook anything. But majority of the time, I'm going to go with the fire. And even if it's a situation that you look ahead and they say, okay, this whole area, you can't start a fire, not taking fire equipment is, to me, not an option. Because if something happens that you need that fire, an emergency situation, at least you can start. It's better to be alive and get in trouble from the park than to be dead. So, sometimes you got to look at it like that. And I think people, they jump to the conclusion right away, oh, I'm not going to need that stuff. I'm not allowed to even have it. I'm not going to take it.
It's funny, Dan, that, as a hiker of just one main hike, having done it myself, I never even considered fire as a natural part of it. But for you, it's an integral part of whatever you do when you're outdoors. And I'm not sure that many, I may be wrong, but I don't think many hikers think in those terms, do they?
No, I would say the large majority of hikers I know and the people that come through my classes, it's an afterthought for them because they relate it to just classic car camping. So they pull their car up somewhere, get a fire going, or you're with a bunch of people having a couple beers and cooking something over the fire. Sure. And they don't relate it to exactly what they're doing. And in my mind, I'm like, well, if you can just carry a small fire starter, like we talked about last week, light that fire, heat up your water. You're not wasting any of the fuel you're carrying. You might have to pick up less supplies along the way. It's just an alternate source of things to do. And in the worst case, that's always going to be there for you, where your stove and your fuel, if something happens, might not be there.
Yeah. Now, what about getting water? I know people tend to stop close to streams or relatively close to streams to get their water. Are there other ways to get water from the plants around you? Because I presume that's the sort of stuff you do if water's difficult, isn't it?
Yeah. So it's always, like you said, if you see a stream or a creek, anywhere that you can fill up with water, even if you have water and only drank half a liter, fill that half a liter up because it's important always to keep topping off your water supply. But in cases where you're out of water and you need to get water, the best thing to do is, number one, try to conserve yourself as much. So don't get hot, sweaty, overheated. Don't sit next to the fire if it's warm out. We're trying to conserve as much as possible. And then we can always collect rainwater. And the thing with boiling water, which I always go back to boiling, is you can take the muddiest, dirtiest water, and it's not going to taste good. But if you boil that and you bring it to a good rolling boil, it's going to kill all the bacteria inside of it, if there is any. So you can drink it. Like I said, it's not going to taste good, but it's a way to hydrate. So you can take any kind of water source and boil that and drink it. And again, it's not going to taste good, but it's going to do what it needs to do for your body.
Somebody said to me, and you can tell me whether you think this is a good advice or not. Someone said to me that that they, when they get to a stream, even if they've got water, they make a point of sitting down and hydrating, taking at least a litre of water and then filling up and maybe even sometimes taking another litre. So that stops you carrying so much water because you're carrying it inside you. You've already hydrated. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that does. I mean, anytime we can like I always say, get ahead of the curve. If you can get ahead of the curve and be super hydrated and super well fed, that's all the better going into the next leg of your journey. Because if something happens, then you set yourself up for success by being hydrated and not thinking, oh, I'm going to get to that next stream and then I'll get all my water there. So that makes total sense to me. Yep.
So talk more about shelter now then. Tell me, you said you can put a tarp up. What other ways do you get shelter, and what should you consider when you're looking for shelter?
Yeah, so whenever you're going to set a shelter up, one thing you need to take into consideration is sometimes you don't need a fire. All you need is to set a shelter up just to get yourself out of the elements. And that could be a huge benefit, especially in cold weather. If you have a good sleeping bag and you can block the wind a little bit, you're going to be good. Sure. And we need to look at shelter, starting with just the clothing we're wearing. Are we layering our clothing appropriately, and are we overdressing a little bit? Because it's easy to take clothes off, but if you don't have them, you can't put more on. Yes. So I always tell people overdress. And I know in the hiking community, we want to keep everything lightweight, but having an extra windbreaker, having one extra layer of clothing just to cover ourselves is hugely beneficial. And then when we decide we're going to set shelter up, we want to use the environment to our advantage. So rather than just setting up on top of a mountain because it is a nice view today, a storm might come in and just pound us with bad weather, high winds, cold rain over the evening. So we really want to use the environment. We want to find lower lying areas, nowhere that's going to flood, but a lower lying area that's not going to be as subject to wind. We want to make sure that there's no dead trees around us that can fall and injure us. We want to make sure, if we can, there's a water source close to us. So that way, while it's our downtime, while we're resting and getting sleep and sitting at camp, we can keep hydrating really well. And then we want to make sure, if we're going to have a fire, that we have plentiful amount of wood. So, when you're on the Appalachian Trail, you're on some of them high mountain peaks, and it's all hardwood forest, especially here in Pennsylvania. It's hardwood forest. So there's not a lot of down material that you can get to make a good, proper fire. So if you can get a little bit lower down into one of those valleys, you normally start to come across more down trees, smaller trees, saplings, things that you can build a fire with. So if we keep in mind, those widow makers, so the dead standing trees, we're staying away from them. We're making sure there's a water source around us. We're making sure there's wood, and we're protecting ourselves from the wind. We really set ourselves up for success with a shelter.
So when you hike, you go out, what sort of size, if you're going out, say, for a week, what sort of pack weight do you take with you? Or do you not bother about pack weight?
It does, I always look at, when I'm going out, more than just a scenic hike for me, I'm really about the physical part of it. So I like the challenge of physically having to push really hard. Right. And for me, I'll pack the backpack with what I want to have in it. And I look at it as a challenge that I'm going to have to lug this thing. Now, I don't go overboard. I'm not putting things in that I'm like, no way am I going to need. But just the bare essentials. So I'm looking at food. I'm looking at my sleeping bag, maybe a hammock and a tarp. And then I'm taking my few survival items I'm going to need. So rather than like back to water, so I'll take, your plastic Nalgene bottle, but I'm carrying a metal container too. So I'm carrying a metal clean canteen possibly. That way I can boil in that canteen. I don't have to worry about anything else. I could just pull that canteen out and boil in it. So swapping things out like that, and then food, and then I'm, pretty good to go.
Cool. That's very interesting stuff. I don't think I've considered the possibility of having to worry about survival on the AT, and I suspect some of the wilder trails are more where you need to worry about that sort of thing. Right. But certainly just merely having these techniques, or at least understanding these techniques, I think are a great help to people. So I appreciate that. Thanks very much indeed, Dan.
Yes, thank you.
Cheers then. Bye.
Bye.
I really love the way in which Dan conveys his information and how it's all geared to being successful in the wilderness. You really can't argue with any of that, can you? I'll be back in the US for about a week or 10 days when you hear this on Thursday, so I should get the chance to be a little more relaxed in putting the show together next week. This week, I'm actually nearly on the floor recording as there isn't a chair in my hotel room. Finally today, Ellie and Colin are into the Meseta on their Camino. They grade it in the traditional Aussie way. They have one or two drinks beyond the optimal amount. By the way, this week Ellie is beeped 3 times a new record for her. To be fair, she's reporting Colin's responses and some graffiti on a road sign, so I apologise to my niece Laura for having to read the real thing. To be fair, she does read these words out with gusto. I'll see you next week. Day 17. Carrion de los Condes to Wheatfields. Colin. Carry on camping. That night in Carrion de los Condes, Ellie and I did the only sensible thing. We got pissed with 3 Germans and decided to start walking at midnight. We also decided, again very sensibly, that the only way to deal with Ellie's injury was to ignore it. Instead of waiting around for an X-ray, we took to our wrappings with a pair of sharp scissors and headed off into the night. I'm a real pilgrim now. I have a stick that Ellie found for me. I also have a scallop shell in my backpack, again, and a gift from Ellie. And my feet are bandaged up. All the things I laughed at right at the beginning of the walk, the ski poles, the socks and sandals, no longer seem funny but very practical. A flat, dark horizon. The Meseta goes on forever. My sandals slide on the stones underfoot. The road out is straight, level, stony and treacherous. Behind us the fireworks, green, red and silver, blossom and fade over Carrion, followed several seconds later by the rebound of the explosion. We walk through the darkness towards the fading cheese-round blue moon. After moonset, it is very, very dark. So dark that Ellie finally agrees to put a battery torch on her head and wear it like a miner's lamp. I've been trying to manipulate her into doing this for days. It inspires my sense of the ridiculous, but I keep my thoughts to myself because she is threatened to take it off if I laugh. Our pace increases and she strides ahead like Arnold Schwarzenegger on coke, the Determinator. Earlier today, the girl was encased in bandages from toe to knee and popping aspirin like M&Ms, but tonight, nothing will stop her. What she does balk at is sleeping in a wheat field. She's afraid of the mice. What is it with women and mice? They have no venom. They don't have teeth. They won't sleep with you and break your heart. What is there to be afraid of? Eventually, fatigue wins out. Exhausted, we throw our sleeping bags down in a field and collapse. We wake just before sunrise, shivering with cold. We prepare to start walking again, just to get warm. Chapter 19. Day 18. Wheatfields to San Nicolas del Real Camino.
Ellie. A pair of pissed pilgrims passed out in a pasture. Though we lay there for over 3 hours, neither of us slept. Cole sits up shivering with cold. I climb to my feet to stand and am reminded of my foot. I try to escape my sleeping bag, fall flat on my face and am reminded that I'm still drunk. Never mind. We roll wet sleeping bags into wet backpacks. Cole hoists my pack onto my shoulders. Doof! And like true troopers, we march into a rising dawn, knowing there will be no coffee until the stores open in another 3 hours. Crunch, click, crunch, crunch, click, crunch. Hey, Cole, what would you do for a coffee? Crunch, click, crunch, crunch, click. No, I mean it. What would you do right now for a hot coffee? 20 minutes later, an angel disguised as a smelly barman with sideburns is serving us coffee. I'm alive. On the other side of Coffee de la Cueza, the trail divides into 2 routes. There are several options along the way. This accounts for the varying estimates of the total distance to Santiago. Every now and then there are 2 sets of arrows going off in different directions. Krusty's trusty guidebook indicates that the 2 routes link up a few kilometres down the trail. But typically, 2 trails will vary in distance, terrain and scenery, and access to facilities like shade, water, food and towns. Shorter is not necessarily better. I leave the decision to Cole. He walks on, I follow. It should be mentioned that my eyesight is not good at the best of times. However, due to the heat, enduring delirium, and the last bottle of red wine I polished off hours earlier, the next 9 kilometres towards San Nicolas del Real Camino are a surreal experience as my Camino transforms into a series of Dali vistas. A single paddock of giant sunflowers, or a scene from Day of the Traffids. A mud brick Mudjar-style church, or another stack of hay bales. The miniature entrance to an underground bodega, or the front door of a hobbit house. A lone tree on a barren plain, or a cyclist taking a leak in a wheat field. A desolate stretch of wheat field land, or Colin's official motive for killing me. Take me home. Ellie, love and other stuff. The wheat fields give way to long straight highways and overpasses with no cars on them. We walk past a field of sunflowers standing to attention, eager, corn-yellow flowers like children's faces turned towards the sun. Terradillas de los Templarios is an adobe village that was once a stronghold of the legendary Templars, a place of power and mystery. This morning it is grey and forlorn and smells of cow manure. Outside town we have to walk along the highway again. There is a road sign that indicates no overtaking, a red car beside a black car. A graffitist has been to work with a black pen. The guy in the red car now has a speech bubble. "Get out of the way, you." The guy in the black car is shouting back. And underneath, Buen Camino. We've not seen anyone we know for days. The usual crew of familiar faces has dispersed, perhaps lost to the mesita. Of those we have seen or met, conversations have been a combination of charades mixed with single-word sentences to overcome the language barrier. The last person I held a decent conversation with was Klaus, an Austrian, who is walking the Camino for what he says is his 4th time. I don't actually know if I believe him. If he is telling the truth, I don't know if he's sane. What does he possibly think he will find this time round that he didn't 15 years ago? Surely I've missed the point. Maybe I'm not trying hard enough. More pain, perhaps. If pain is what the Camino is about, then Cole's obviously got the gist. He's suffered every day since Logrono. Whatever happened there has opened the door to a closet full of skeletons. He's a different man these days to the one I knew before, so quiet and drawn. One look at his face shows that he is carrying a load greater than the weight in his pack. I've watched him ache, heard him question, seen his eyes fade, and his body waste away. He's lost his famous passion for food, and even his trademark sense of humour seems out of place in conversation. Now we go about most days in silence, and what few words he offers are generally thick with cynicism and contempt. When others are around, he hides behind the mask of the man he was, the sharp tongue, the quick wit. Some see straight through it, others laugh. Yet the longer this goes on, the worse his jokes become, and the more layers drop away. I've been sitting alone outside the albergue in San Nicolas del Real Camino for most of the afternoon, wrapped up in my own thoughts and enjoying the solitude. Cole sits down at the table and asks if we can speak more about something we touched on earlier in the day, on the topic of love and women. Hearing him question his relationships and himself as a cold reminder of how cruel love can be. Have you ever been in love, Al? Yeah, unfortunately. What happened? Loved the wrong man. Did he break your heart? Eventually. But the truth was he broke much more, and in doing so confirmed many fears as I secretly knew he would. I was young and naive, and although I knew I shouldn't have stayed, I did. From that point on, no thought could undo my feelings. Like it or not, love is indiscriminate, a feeling, not a decision. It ignites a light inside, and by the time it's burning, it's too late to try and put it out. You can stop feeding it with feelings so it doesn't grow, and it may even dim or fade with time, but it never really dies, and knowing better doesn't simply switch it off. Regardless of what you want, need, or think you know, somewhere beneath the veil of conscious thought, the love remains. Unlike Cole, I felt no guilt when it was over, just crippling regret and devastation. I knew the only thing left to do was to move on and try and start again. But at the time, even that seemed impossible. I think about Cole, trying to start again. In a way, maybe that's what this trip has become for him. I know what it's like to be cast aside by someone you love, but I've not been a parent fighting for the life of my child, lost my life partner or my faith. Still, in a way, I share some part of his pain just by being here. It's cruel, but whether we like it or not, as we both battle along our own independent paths, we are each other's only source of strength and support. What affects one ultimately affects both, and this is how it will be from here until Santiago. The albergue owner's daughter appears, a pixie in pigtails, with a smile as bright as the Spanish sun. She hands me a menu and offers to prepare me something. She is infectiously sweet and appears much younger than she is. She knows English, but she won't speak it. She says she's too shy, but she understands much more than she lets on. I watch her sitting in the background, eavesdropping on conversations among other pilgrims. She has a spark in her eye that's too bright to be contained by this place, a desert town of 80 locals. The pilgrims are her way to the world. She touches my arm with a look of encouragement, and as she happily skips away, I wonder, am I becoming the kind of pilgrim the Spanish cyclist spoke of, who doesn't talk much and wants to be left alone? These days I want nothing more.